Scafflogic introduces you to a world of logic. Hello and welcome to this Scafflogic training video. Today's topic is how to build a scaffold without a deck. In this video, I will be using Lyre All-Around Scaffold. If you have a different scaffold brand, you may notice that I have different measurements and components. Whenever we need to build a scaffold without a deck, we must first go into the Properties menu and click the checkbox Build as Lifts. And when we make this selection, the system automatically knows that we do not want decking. Let's get out of the dialog box for now. This section is rather large, so we will make it a bit smaller by using our hotkey minus and page down function. And now we can design our structure just like we build a platform. This function is normally used for signboards or support structures. Once we have it the way we want it, let's just add one more here, just for fun. We can build it up to see if everything is joined together properly. It may take a few moments for our scaffold to be generated because the system is constructing all the bracing required to support it. This schematic shows us that we have no decking in the scaffold structure. Let's switch to 3D view to get a better look. And you can see that we have built a beautiful structure without any decks. If you decide that you do in fact want to place a deck in one of the scaffolds, you can just click on the menu and go in and add a deck to the particular level that you need. You can repeat this process for as many decks as you like.